here with us the chairperson of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, and the commissioners are as well present in front of us. They will introduce themselves momentarily, but meanwhile, just to mention that immediately after the chairperson speaks, we shall have a Q&A. So if you have any questions, just note them down at the very tail end. You will be free to ask the chairperson any question. Immediately then at the end, there is coffee, tea. Please don't rush away. We have tea and coffee for you. Then bathrooms, toilets. I hope you've already used the bathrooms, toilets, but now unfortunately you have to wait till the end if you want to use the bathroom and toilet. Otherwise you can go to the 5th or the 6th floor of SRC offices and you can use the bathroom and the toilets there. Present here also we have the Secretariat, members of the Secretariat from SRC who are also here with us. My name is Tony Mwangi. I'm Head of Corporate Communications, and I would like to bring it to the high table for an introduction so you're familiar with who's going to be speaking to you today. Chair.
Good morning and welcome to SRC. I will ask the commissioners to introduce themselves as we start, starting from Maida.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, media personalities. My name is Commissioner Nelly Ashubu.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of the Fourth Estate. My name is John Kennedy Moyoncho. I'm a member of the Commission.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Mungua Munya, Commissioner Karibuni.
Good morning. I'm Commissioner Wangui Mshiri.
All right. Before the chair sets off right away, just to give a sense of who is present here. Citizen, KBC, Radio Citizen, K24, KTN, Standard NTV, Hope TV, Hope FM, Pamoja FM, Inoro TV, Daily Nation, Business Daily. If I have not mentioned your name, you're here, and just, yeah, go ahead.
47.
TV 47 is here. Sorry? Yeah, KTN Standard I mentioned. All right. Thank you very much. Without further ado, sorry, we apologize sincerely for having to start this a little late, but here we are. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So let me just start by really giving the context why we're here. We are currently in the process of public participation on the remuneration and benefits for state officers. For other public officers, we have been engaging the employing entities to give us their feedback on the remuneration and benefits for other public officers. For state officers, it is a requirement in the Constitution that it goes through public participation. So we started the process of public participation, you will be aware, on Thursday. And following that, we have received a number of requests for clarification. So today we are here to really go through the questions and areas of clarifications that we have received from our stakeholders, from the media, from the public, so that we give information that will inform public participation. So that is really why we are here. And to start us off, we will go through the questions that have been sent to the Commission so far, at the end of which we will open it up, because I'm sure you also have questions or any areas that you would like us to clarify to inform all of us so that we are then able to engage in public participation with the information that is required. So it is in that context that we are having this briefing today, so that we all have the information that we require to give feedback that then is based on information. So to start is really to start with the mandate of SRC, which most of us will be aware. Nonetheless, it is important to restate that the Salaries and Remuneration Commission is established under Article 230 of the Constitution with the mandate to review and set the remuneration and benefits for state officers and to advise both the national and county government on remuneration and benefits for other public officers. While setting reviewing, setting, and advising, the Commission is guided by 5 key principles. 4 of these principles are set in the Constitution, and the 5th one is in the SRC Act. These constitutional principles are in Article 230, subsection 5 of the Constitution. And the first one of these principles is the need to ensure that the public wage bill is fiscally sustainable. The second of these principles is the need to ensure that the public service is able to attract and retain the requisite skills to discharge its functions. The next one is the need to recognize performance and productivity. The 4th principle is fairness and transparency. And the 5th principle, which is in the SRC Act, is equal pay for work of equal value. So those are the principles that we use to determine any remuneration and benefits. And in that context, based on the SRC Act, the Commission then set a 4-year review cycle, meaning that every 4 years we review the pay. That pay, as we review, we then base it on those principles that I've just enumerated. So let me now go through the questions that we have received so far, and as I mentioned, we'll take yours at the end of this. So the first question that has been asked severally is SRC, or is the Commission concerned about affordability and fiscal sustainability of the wage bill, and how have we taken this into account in the review that we have just taken through public participation? So SRC in this considers the wage bill as a very, very important principle. And I want to begin by just sharing a few numbers so that we put it in context. The first one is to say the compensation for all public officers. We are at the moment, if we take the figures of 2020-2021, is at 998 billion. That is an estimated figure because it has yet to go through the full auditing process, but it is to 998 billion. That is estimated to reach 1 trillion mark in 2021-2022 financial year. So that is the wage bill. But what does that mean if we then look at that as a ratio of revenue and as a ratio of GDP, because that is the important part that we need to look at. So as a ratio of the wage bill, we are currently now at 44%, and this is projected to grow to 46% against a target of 35% that is set in the Public Finance Management Act. Now, the other measure we also use is a percentage of GDP. So as a percentage of GDP, we are currently at 8.25%, and that will drop to 7.73% in the outer year, against a target of 7.5%, which is the average for developing countries such as Kenya. Now, that wage bill is informed by, one, growth in the numbers of the employees in the public sector. As we speak today, the country employs just about 1 million public officers. That is both state officers and other public officers. So, but the actual number is about 963,000. So it is about the 1 million. That's the public officers in the country. So with that context, therefore, how has the Commission considered the affordability and fiscal sustainability of the wage bill in the pay review that we have just concluded? So first of all is to say the government, as I mentioned, employs 1 million public officers. And as a developing nation, to enable the country to deliver the services to the population, then the country must continue employing public officers, especially in the healthcare, in teaching and security sector. So what that means is that we will continue to see an increase in the wage bill in absolute amount. You will appreciate that where we are today, services have not necessarily reached the level where we would like to reach. We have not, for example, attained the teacher to student ratio that is recommended globally. Neither have we attained the WHO recommendation in terms of the healthcare worker to population. So that goes to demonstrate that we will still continue to employ public officers. And as we employ public officers, it is for the good of the country. And therefore, the wage bill in absolute amount will continue to grow. The concern that we have is when we look at that wage bill as a percentage of revenue. Because as a percentage of revenue, we are below the targets that I explained earlier. So how has the Commission taken into account that growing wage bill? The first thing is, due to the economic condition, SRC in the last cycle, that is the last 2 years, actually froze the salary structures. And this was to acknowledge the difficult economic conditions as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So the last 2 years, there was a freeze of all salary structures in the public service. That was taken into account to manage the wage bill in view of the economic conditions. At that point in time, the Commission did, through a circular to all public institutions, and it was shared with the public as well through the media, was that after 2 years, the Commission will then review, and if the economic situation has improved, then the Commission will set and advise on a new salary structure for state officers and public officers. And that is the context of why the Commission has taken that review. So to achieve the target market positioning of the remuneration in the public service, the Commission then undertook salary surveys. And that's a requirement that is also in the SRC Act, that for us to be able to attract and retain public officers, then we must carry out market surveys to establish where we are and to ensure attraction and retention. The Commission has set a target market positioning of 50th percentile. 50th percentile here means that you're in the middle of a set of data. So if we have surveyed 100 organizations, then we are saying, looking at the pay, where would we want to be? And we want to be at the middle positioning. That is what the 50th percentile is speaking to. So with that target positioning of 50 percentile, in this current review, the Commission then looked at what would it cost if we were to take all the remuneration to that 50th percentile. And it would cost 340 billion to adjust all salaries to 50th percentile. However, taking into account that the country is still going through a period of economic constraints, financial constraints due to the economy, the Commission, in consultation with the National Treasury, then was allocated 22 billion per year. So from an ideal position, if the country was able to accommodate to get us to the correct positioning of 50th percentile, we would require 340 billion. However, given where the country is in terms of the wage bill and taking into account the current economic situation, specifically the financial constraints, then the Commission, in consultation with the National Treasury, was allocated 22.6 billion per year. That amount which then, I said per year because it will be implemented in 2 phases, 22.6 in year 1 and the same amount in year 2, that amount represents 2% of the total wage bill. So as a percentage, it will be 2% of the wage bill. So that is how the Commission has then ensured that the wage bill is not overtaking economic growth to a level that it would negatively impact on development, the development space, fiscal space. So further to mitigate this, the Commission has developed a framework to recognize performance and productivity. Indeed, as I mentioned earlier, that is one of the principles that is set in the Constitution. The importance of this framework is that it will drive performance and productivity. Once the productivity goes up, then there will be revenue growth. So with revenue growth, then the country will be able to address the issue of the ratio of the wage bill and revenue. So that is one of the key strategies that the Commission, working together in collaboration with other state actors, is targeting as a way to really improve revenue, address the wage bill ratios, and recognize the public officers who excel in their duties. So that becomes an additional reward for performance and productivity, but it is clearly linked to productivity. So that is the other way in which the Commission is really addressing the wage bill to revenue ratio. And we have actually looked at this as a core way in which we can actually succeed in addressing this issue of the wage bill. We will achieve more by pushing for productivity, because as I explained earlier, the numbers will continue to grow in order to deliver on essential services in the country. So the other question that has been asked by our stakeholders during this public participation is, why a salary review now? Why are we reviewing salaries? Why are we doing this now and not another time? So pursuant to Section 11E of the SRC Act, the Commission set a 4-year review cycle. The first cycle was for the period 2013-2014 to 2016-2017. The second cycle covered 2017-2018 to 2020-2021. We are now in the third review cycle that covers 2021-22 to 24-25. And this review has been undertaken in 2 phases. The first one for the period 2021-22 to the period 2022-23, there was a salary structure freeze on account of performance of the economy due to COVID-19. We are now in the third and the 4th year of that review cycle, which is now for the period of 2023-24 to 2024-2025. And in this period, the Commission has reviewed the remuneration and benefit for both state officers and other public officers based on the principles that I enumerated earlier. So the next question that has been raised also commonly is, what did SRC consider in the third remuneration review cycle? So the first consideration is the principles, the 5 of them that I enumerated, and that is what the Commission took into account. And in terms of operationalizing those principles, there are certain specific areas that we look at. And the first one of this is the labor market studies that I alluded to earlier. So in 2021, SRC undertook labor market surveys locally and internationally to determine the salary market positioning of both state officers and other public officers. And the survey did give us an indication of where we are. And just to give you a very high-level summary of those outcomes, for state officers, the survey revealed that we are at 45th percentile against the target of 50th percentile. For state corporations, they are above the 50th percentile. They are on average at 89th percentile. The civil service in both national and county governments are below the 50th percentile. They are at 39th percentile. The teaching service is also below. They are at 36th percentile. The public universities are at 49th percentile. And other public officers, that is the secretariat staff in the commissions, are at 84th percentile. So what this informed us is that the current pay structures are not harmonized. You can see the disparities from institutions that are above the 50th percentile up to 30% above, and those that are below. And therefore, the Commission deliberately took a decision to try and harmonize these structures. But as I mentioned earlier, full harmonization would cost 340 billion, which the country cannot afford. Which means that any harmonization has to be taken progressively, taking into account affordability and fiscal sustainability. And that is where we are. So we are in the process of harmonizing the pay structures, but they cannot be done at the same time, at a go. The fiscal space cannot accommodate a one-off pay review. So the salary structures, therefore, as I've mentioned, is as a result of that, any salary structures that are above 50th percentile will be retained. There will be no review of salary structures where it has already reached the 50th percentile, which is the target market positioning. We shall also implement job evaluation grading results, and this will help us to align the relative worth of jobs, thus attain the principle of equal pay for work of equal value. The Commission has established or determined job evaluation as the methodology by which the Commission will assess jobs to ascertain the relative worth of the jobs, and also to look at relative worth internally and external. So through job evaluation, it is a process that helps us to achieve the harmonization that is desired in the different salary structures in the public service. So this review will therefore take into account the job evaluation results that we carried out a year ago. The third feature that we will see in the review is progressive harmonization of salary structures. The fourth one is cushioning for cost of living subject to affordability and fiscal sustainability. The other area is addressing relativity between remuneration for state officers and that of other public officers. What this specifically is trying to address is, over time, the pay of the public officers and state officers are in a way that the public officers at the senior levels are earning higher than the public officers. And in a number of cases, it is roles where the public officer is a lower grade than the state officer, but they are earning a higher pay. So one of the things that this review therefore is addressing is that overlap of salaries between the senior officers in the public officers against the state officers. So that is an overlap that is being addressed in this review. The other one is ensuring that the minimum basic salary is compliant with the current minimum wage. So the Commission ensures that there is no salary that is below the set minimum wage in the country. Now go to the next question, which is who are the beneficiaries of the proposed review? And the beneficiaries is both state officers and other public officers at both national and county governments. And you will see that for state officers, we have shared that information with the public for purpose of public participation because it is a requirement in the Constitution. For other public officers, the review has also been done and it has been shared with all the employing entities, and that discussion and feedback is ongoing with the employing entities. So when we talk about state officers, it is important to clarify who are state officers. And the state officers are stipulated in the Constitution, but these are the President, the Deputy President, the CSS, the Cabinet Secretaries, Permanent Secretaries, Judges and Magistrates and Cadis, Members of Parliament, Senators, MCAs, Chairpersons and Commission members of independent offices and commissions, Governors, Deputy Governors, Auditor General, Controller of Budget, and a few other offices also in the counties, like the CECs are also state officers. So there is a very long list as to who is a state officer. So when we refer to remuneration for state officers, it actually covers that spectrum of roles as set in the Constitution. So what is the average percentage review?
Apologies, just 1 second. Apologies for that. They're fixing the lift, but you okay?
Yeah.
Proceed.
Okay, we shall proceed. So what is the percentage review? So the average change in remuneration, and I will break it down to the state officers and other public officers. For state officers, the average change in year one, which is 2023-2024, is 8%. And for the average for the year after is 7%. For other public officers, the average change in the first year is 9%, and for the following year is 7%. Now, it is to note that for the other public officers, that percentage change includes an annual increase that is paid automatically in their salary structure. So there is an inbuilt automatic increase of 3% average every year. In some cases it is more than that, but there is an average 3%. So when I spoke of the 9% and 7%, it is inclusive of the automatic increase. So at this point then, it's important to explain why 8% again is 7, then there is 9 again is 7. So for public officers, for state officers, the salaries for state officers has not been reviewed comprehensively for 10 years. The only time that there has been an increase has been a result of job evaluation, which only affected 1 or 2 positions. But for state officers, we've not had a comprehensive review for the last 10 years. The second reason why you see an 8% is because of addressing the overlap between the public officers' roles and the state officer roles, especially where those 2 positions, one is the public officer is reporting to the state officer and the state officer pay is lower. So that is why the 8%. It is to address the fact that for the last 10 years, there's been no comprehensive review on the pay for state officers. And secondly, the fact that we're addressing overlap